Thank you very much, Jane and Darlene. Thank you for inviting Lars and myself. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a big pleasure to present to you today the SensusAccess technology. I myself am a special education teacher. I've been working around 25 years to support especially those that are blind and partially sighted at the Danish National Centre of Visual Impairment here in Denmark. Lars is a computer scientist and he's been working almost 30 years to invent and promote the technologies that enables us to support persons in mainstream education that are blind or print impaired. Now, we've been working with SensusAccess here in our country, Denmark, and throughout Europe for the last 10 years where it has been fully functioning, and we have been especially adapting it to fit into higher education institutes for the last 5 years, introducing it first in America, where it's quite successful. There are over 100 schools using it, and especially in the UK for the last year it's become very popular. Just last month we were in Australia for the very first time, and there we got in contact with Jane and Darlene, and now we are, as I said before, very happy to let you know about the service to see if it can fit into some of your settings as well. That would make us really happy. So having said that, I'll just leave the screen to Lars, who will take you through some of the functionality and the rationale behind SensusAccess. So Lars, take it away.
Thank you so much. Right, so basically the SensusAccess service is a self-service solution. The intention is that students, faculty, staff, alumni, and others associated with an academic institution will go to a web page, preferably on the institution's own website, and they'll upload their documents and they'll decide themselves how they want the documents converted. At the moment we have 5 main workflows in the service. First of all, you can use the service to convert documents into MP3 audio files, and they're great because they are very portable. They play on so many different devices. You can use them in many different situations. So for instance, you can use MP3 files when you're commuting, when you're doing your workouts, when you're doing the dishes, and so on. And it's also a great format for repetition of lecture notes. The downside with MP3 is that it can be very difficult to navigate and to orientate yourself in an MP3 audio file because it is just a long sequence of audio, so it can be difficult to go to a particular page or locate a certain section or chapter. So for that reason we also have support for structured audio books in the service, and there are really 2 formats in play at the moment. One is the old disability format called DAISY. It is being superseded these days with a mainstream format, just an ebook in the EPUB format with a media overlay. In terms of functionality, they can do pretty much the same, and EPUB is expected to supersede the DAISY format shortly. But you can use the service to convert documents into either of these 2 structured audiobook formats. In a structured audiobook, you have the text, you have the audio. Those 2 things are synchronized. So we can highlight as we go along and reading back the documents to the user. And then in addition to that, you have all the navigational aids that you need in order to find your way around the document. So you'll have a table of contents that you can use for navigation. You'll be able to navigate using the headers of the document. You can put in bookmarks and so on. Then in the third workflow, you can use the service to convert documents into plain ebooks. Ebooks, reflowable ebooks, they have so many advantages. You can scale up the text, you can change the color combinations, the background colors, the foreground colors, you can substitute the fonts, change the scrolling direction, the brightness, the contrast levels, and so on. And for those reasons, we have found that the ebooks in many cases can be seen as digital large print, where you can produce individualized large print to support people with low vision. And we've also found that ebooks can be quite useful for people with dyslexia. And you can use the service to convert documents into the main reflowable ebook formats. That means that you can convert documents into EPUB, which is used by pretty much everybody at the moment with the exception of Amazon. And you can also convert documents into the Mobi Pocket format, which is the format used by Amazon for their Kindle devices. In the fourth workflow, you can use the service to convert documents into digital Braille books that can then subsequently be embossed on a Braille embosser. They can be shown on a Braille display, or they can be loaded onto a Braille note taker. And then in the last workflow, we call that our accessibility workflow. You can convert otherwise inaccessible or tricky documents into something that is more accessible or less tricky to use. This is not a compliance tool, so we are not guaranteeing that documents that have been processed by the service will comply with the accessibility guidelines, but they will be more accessible and less tricky to use when they have been processed by the service. To give you some examples, this is where you can convert image-only PDF documents into Word files, into text documents. You can convert pictures of text. We've seen situations where students are using the camera in their smartphones to take pictures of text and then subsequently submit those JPEG pictures to the service for conversion into something more useful. An example of a tricky document could be a PowerPoint presentation for a screen reader user. Many blind users find PowerPoint difficult to work with, so we have a number of conversion options available, especially for PowerPoint presentations, where you can convert them into accessible PDF with or without the notes sections of the PowerPoint. You can convert them into web projects where you would navigate your PowerPoint within the context of a web browser, or you can convert documents into RTF outline files. Some of these functions are language aware, others are not, but we do have quite a lot of language support in the service. The audio services and the Braille services are language aware, and especially on the audio side we have quite a lot of language support. You'll find support for all the main European languages, also some of the smaller ones. We have support for American English, for Latin American Spanish, for Arabic English bilingual. We have support for the 3 Chinese languages, for Japanese, for Korean. We have support for Russian, and then a few languages beyond that. So there's really a lot of language support in the service. We are really promoting the SensusAccess service in order to promote independence and self-sufficiency amongst those with special needs, in order to support inclusion in mainstream environments, in mainstream education, and subsequently on the labor market. And then of course also to do whatever we can do to promote and support social inclusion. But what it really boils down to for academic institutions signing up with the service is first and foremost availability. This is an online service. It's fully automated. That means that it's simply available whenever you need to go and do a conversion. You don't need to notify somebody else. You can simply upload your documents and select your conversions whenever you need to do that without relying on other people. Since it is entirely automated, that of course also affects the privacy of users, and just because you have special needs, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to share what you're reading with others. Yes?
Lars, you need to slow down slightly because they're having trouble with the captioning. So slow down slightly, and you are now on slide number 2. Go ahead.
I'll slow down. Then thirdly, you can use the service to produce multiple different alternate formats. We've found that in many situations students are being limited to receiving just one or a few alternate formats, but we've also found that depending on the situation that a student is in, sometimes one format may be more suitable than another. So institutions can actually use the SensusAccess service as a way of empowering students to go and do their own conversions into whatever format is most suitable for them in their particular situation. So for instance, if they just want an MP3 file for studying while commuting, they can do that. In other situations, if they're engaged in more in-depth studying activities, they can produce something slightly more sophisticated than that. Then there is a positive cost implication of using the service. Apart from Braille, where you would still need some quite costly equipment in order to be able to render the Braille in a tactile format, for all the other output formats produced by the service, you'll be able to use free apps, free applications together with whatever hardware you already have. So you'll be able to use free software on your laptop computer, on your smartphone, on your tablet to read the material produced by the service. And then of course, if you are engaged in online education, if you're doing distance learning, as we know many institutions in Australia are. If you're engaged in blended learning, if you have some other type of online presence, then of course you can use the service to provide accessibility support in those environments. We thought a lot about how to price the service when we came up with the idea originally, and there were a few things that we would like to achieve with the pricing model. First of all, we would like to make sure that institutions could use the service and present it to students as a long-term strategy. So we did not want to exclude students who graduate, but also we would like institutions to be able to provide the service for their alumni. Secondly, we did not want a pricing model that excluded those users in the mainstream, or said in another way, we did not want you to have to qualify for access to the service by having a disability. The reasons for that is that we actually believe that providing the service to everybody as opposed to just people with disabilities is a good way of trying to remove some of the stigma that usually surrounds these technologies. So we wanted a model that would allow institutions to extend services to everybody, those with disabilities and those without disabilities. And then lastly, we did not want to penalize those institutions who are very good at rolling out the service. We did not want a pricing model where institutions had to worry about how much the service was being used because it might impact the pricing of the service. So what we came up with is a very simple model. It's based on an annual flat fee that allows for unlimited use by everybody associated with an institution, and that means all students, all staff, all faculty, and all alumni. Now switching to the next slide, entitled SensusAccess Users. I did mention that we do welcome people from the mainstream to use the service, but having said that, our main users will be those with special needs, those users with disabilities, those who are blind, partially sighted, have a reading impairment, a learning disorder, a cognitive disability, a motor deficiency, a concussion, anything like that that requires them to need access to material in alternate formats. Then at the other end, we have those users who are there to support the primary users, so the alt media professionals, faculty members, staff members, and other professionals who are preparing material on behalf of others. So in many cases, it will be a mix of those two user groups who are using the service most. But we're also seeing other types of users. One big group is what we call the at-risk students, those who may not be the best of readers, students who can clearly benefit from reading support, but maybe they don't qualify into the official programs, or maybe they don't want to qualify into the official programs because they don't want to be branded as being somebody with a disability. But they can clearly benefit from using the audio services provided by SensusAccess. And then we're seeing different types of mainstream users using the service as well. The most obvious one would be students with poor language skills, foreign students coming into an English language university without the proper language skills. And then of course, they of course can use the service to convert documents and get reading support when reading text in the English language. But we're also seeing other types of users, like foreign language students who are using the service to see or to get the right pronunciation, or to get help in reading a text in a foreign language. We are seeing students who want to experiment with different learning styles to see whether they become more efficient learners if they mix modalities and they listen to the text at the same time as they're reading with their eyes. We're seeing faculty members who are using the service to convert old legacy PDF material into something more useful, or just as a way of converting the meeting minutes into an MP3 audio file that they can then listen to on their smartphone or on their car stereo. So there are lots of different users of the service, and we're not trying to limit who can use it and how it can be used. Switching to the next slide, which is really a summary of what is inside the SensusAccess service, and I'm going to talk you through this. At the top, we got a list of the different technologies. With SensusAccess, we're not introducing any new technologies, really. The SensusAccess service is made up by a number of well-known technologies What we have added is a number of automated workflows so that you don't need to be an expert in converting documents into alternate formats and even into some quite sophisticated alternate formats. Okay, yeah, there was a network connection failure for some reason. So let me take you through this slide once again. So I was explaining that the SensusAccess is not bringing any new technology really into the picture. We're just using a collection of well-known technologies in combination with a number of workflows, automated workflows, so that you don't need to be an expert in converting documents into alternate formats, even into some quite sophisticated formats. And then in addition to that, we have a very easy to use and intuitive user interface that I'm going to show you shortly. So the technologies that you find, we have at the top of this slide text-to-speech engines, 30-some text-to-speech synthesizers, most of them the very best ones in the marketplace. For text-to-braille, we are using our own technology. For ebook conversions, we're using a combination of open source projects. We're using Calibra, we're using the DAISY pipeline. We're also using the DAISY pipeline, of course, for DAISY conversions, where we're also using the Save as DAISY plugin to Microsoft Office. Our OCR processing is done by ABI Recognition Server, which is probably the best OCR engine in the market at the moment. It's the server version of ABI Fine Reader that you may be using already. Then there are really two different interfaces to the service. The original interface was based on email, where users will submit documents to the service for conversion simply just by forwarding documents to particular email addresses. When we did the first implementation in higher education, that was back in 2011, in a collaborative project with Stanford University, we added a web-based interface. And today the web-based interface is by far the most frequently used interface to the service. Then getting information back from the service, getting the results back from the service, that is also being done in a combination of mail and web. So we'll always send back a mail to the requesting user, especially if you typed in the correct email address. If we can just attach the result of the conversion to that email, we'll do that. But if it's a big file, so for instance, if this is the MP3 version of a 600-page law book, then we're not trying to send back that huge file as an email attachment. Instead, we'll put it on our web server. We'll create an encoded link known only to the requesting user, and then we'll send back that link to the user, and the user will have 7 days to go and retrieve the document. After those 7 days, the file is automatically deleted. Also, all source documents that are being submitted into the service are deleted immediately upon completion of the conversion job. So we're not keeping any documents on our servers. At the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the different supported documents, document types that you can submit into the service. These are all the usual suspects: Word files, PowerPoints, HTML and XML files, various types of text documents, RTF documents, all sorts of different PDF documents, ranging from the image-only PDFs to the text-only PDFs to the fully accessible tagged PDF documents. They can all be submitted to the service. There's just one limitation, and that is if there's a password protection on the document where we won't be able to open up the document, then we won't be able to process it. So if there are any kind of restrictions like that on your PDF files, also on your Word files, on your PowerPoints, you would need to remove those prior to submitting them into the service for conversion. There are technologies and services available on the web that will help you in removing such restrictions, but for copyright reasons we decided not to add them in this automated service. Then you can submit ebooks in the EPUB format and also in the MOBI format. You can convert EPUB to MOBI and MOBI to EPUB. And you can also, if you can get hold of open EPUB documents, you can submit them to the service and have them back as RTF documents or plain text documents. And that means that you can actually use commercially available ebooks as a starting point of your alt media conversion process. And then lastly, a whole range of different image type documents, TIFF files, GIF files, bitmaps, JPEGs, and so on, can be submitted to the service for conversion. At the bottom, we got the different languages that we have support for in the service. I did mention that before, but let me just go into a bit more detail on a few of those. For English, it means that we have on the audio side support for British English and for American English. On the Braille side, it means we have support for the British English Braille Code and the Braille Code of North America, and very soon also for the Unified English Braille Code. On Spanish, it means support for Castilian Spanish, Latin American Spanish on the audio side, and the Spanish Braille Code on the Braille side. So they differ slightly from language to language, and we are adding new languages to the service all the time. The latest addition was the addition of Welsh to the service. On the right-hand side, you can see the different output formats, but I'm going to show that in my demonstration, so I'm not going to go into more detail there. And then just before I go into the online demonstration, I would just like to spend a little more time on how we position the SensusAccess service, and I'm doing that on this next slide, where we are trying to explain what is the service really good for, which types of documents is it good for, and where would you want to look for other technologies, and where would you want to bring in people to do your conversion. So we're trying to explain that with this slide, where we have divided the world, first of all, in terms of the document complexity, meaning the complexity of the documents that you're submitting to the service, and on the other dimension, the urgency of the conversion. So looking at the complexity first, we differ between the simpler document types versus the more complex document types. And to us, a simple document would be, it could be an inaccessible document that is mainly containing text without sophisticated graphics, without illustrations, without math equations and so on. That would constitute a simple document to us. Another type of simple document to us would be a document that is provided in an accessible format, and in that case it could even include math equations, it could include graphs, it could include sophisticated illustrations that are important to the contents of the document. So those two types, the inaccessible text-heavy documents on the one side, and the fully accessible documents are examples of simple documents in our world. The more complex documents would be STEM-type material, math textbooks, books of biology and so on, provided in an inaccessible format. You know, the documents where you know that you have lots of equations, you have important illustrations that need to be described or need to be rendered in a 3D model or as a tactile graphic in order to be meaningful for those who can't see them, for instance. So if we're looking at the simpler documents, SensusAccess is a great service and will be able to convert all these documents, even if they contain illustrations and if they contain math equations. For the complex documents, we're saying, well, if there's no urgency in the conversion, you definitely want to look for other technologies and you want to bring in people to do the conversion. So if you know that you have a blind student coming in 4 months' time, then you definitely want to engage people in the conversion. But if there's no time, if this is an urgent conversion, maybe if it's a handout from the professor and students need to have an opinion about it by tomorrow or over the weekend, then even though we may not be able to do the perfect conversion, then we still believe that it's a lot better than not having a conversion done at all. So we would like to emphasize that SensusAccess is not the end solution to all alt-media conversion, but it will allow you to offload a sizable chunk of your alt-media conversions to students and to users themselves. The California Community College System, they have estimated that somewhere between 50 and 60% of all their documents can be handled automatically by the SensusAccess service, and those are the documents used within that particular system, but can be handled by the SensusAccess service with good results. And then let me switch to the online demonstration. I'm showing now a picture of the main interface to the service. This is the generic interface to the SensusAccess service. So I think I'll just skip out of PowerPoint and I'm going to scale up. So what I'm showing now is a web browser. It's my web browser and the generic interface to the SensusAccess service. The intention is not that it should look like this. The intention is really that for each subscribing institution we customize the web interface. So we create a unique version of the web form that uses the colors, the fonts, the sizes of the subscribing institution so that it can be embedded on one or more pages of that subscribing institution's website. And you won't be able to see that it's not an integral part of that because it is using the same colors, the same fonts, the same sizes, and so on. Some of the user interface elements are also optional, so you also get to decide which of those that you want. For instance, the top banner of flags that is used to select between the different user interfaces, user interface languages of the service is an optional component that can be left out. So I'm just going to leave it at British English. It's only going to affect the language and the defaults of the form. In the next section, you get to select the source of the documents. There are really three different ways of getting information into the service using the web form. First of all, you can upload one or more files to the service. This is by far the most frequently used way of interacting with the service, that you just upload your documents. If you upload multiple documents, they need to be of the same type. Secondly, if you can point to a URL, it needs to resolve into a supported document, then you can just paste in or type in the link to the document, and we'll fetch the file, and we'll use that as a starting point of your conversion. And then lastly, you can simply just type in some text, or you can paste in some text into a text box, and then we'll use that text as a starting point for the conversion. For this online demonstration, I'm just going to be using the file upload. So I'm going to show you a few examples. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how we can convert inaccessible documents into more accessible formats, and then I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what we can do if we have already accessible material, and how we can convert that into some quite sophisticated alternate formats. So I'm thinking about four different examples in total. In order to submit a job to the service using the web interface, you always need to go through 4 steps. In step 1, this is where you identify your document or your documents and upload them to the service. In step 2, depending on the type of document that you uploaded, you'll be presented with a list of available conversion options. So the target format of your alt media conversion. In step 3, you get to further qualify that with options, and they differ slightly, of course, from target format to target format. And then in step 4, this is where you type in your email address, where do you want the result of the conversion delivered once it has been completed. And it's always these 4 steps that you need to go through. Don't worry, if you can see the form, you will see that in step 1 I got some buttons with some Danish letters on it. It's because the interface also adapts itself to the language settings of the computer. So on yours, depending on the browser that you're using, it would just say browse or select file on this particular button. So let me find a document that we can work with. So I'm just going to locate my example files here. Find a good file that we can upload and use for the demonstration. So I'm just uploading a document. What I was uploading is a PDF document, The Princess and the Pea. This short fairy tale by Danish author Hans Christian Andersen that you're probably familiar with. Since it is a PDF document, in step 2 we get presented with a list of available conversion options for PDFs. A PDF can be converted into an MP3 audio file. It can be converted into a Braille document, into an ebook, or we can do an accessibility conversion and convert it into something that may be more accessible to the end user. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to be selecting the MP3 audio. We're using the British English version of the form now, so it assumes that my document is in English and that I do have a preference for British English, but it may be that I know differently. It may be that I know that the document is in French, and I can then go and select the French speed synthesizer, or if the document is in Russian, I can go and select the Russian speed synthesizer for this. Or it may be that I have a preference for American English, and I can then go and select the American English speed synthesizer. I'm just going to leave it at British English. And then I also have the option to set the speed of the audio ranging from the very fastest to the very slowest. In many cases, visually impaired users, they like to increase the speed of the audio, so we got 3 faster options for that purpose. Many reading impaired users, they like to decrease the speed of the audio, so we got 3 slower options for that. So I'm going to leave it at normal. And then lastly, in step 4, this is where you need, or you get to type in your email address. Of course, you need to be exact here, and then just submit your job for conversion. You'll get a receipt from the service, and then you just have to wait. It will take anywhere from a couple of minutes to a couple of hours before you get the result back from the service, depending on the size of your document, the shape, the format of your document, and how you have asked to have it converted. So obviously there's a big difference between submitting a one-pager like I did, which will usually come back within a couple of minutes, and then submitting an entire textbook for conversion into something. So let me show you the document that I was uploading, so we know what we are working with there. I'm just skipping to my my file store here and to see if I can find a copy of the document. So this is the document I'm showing now, the PDF document I was submitting to the service. Like this, you should be able to see what it is that we are working with. What we're doing with a document like this when we receive it, this is a PDF document, an inaccessible PDF document, is that we'll run it through our OCR engine. It will come back with lots of clutter, optional hyphens and so on. So we're cleaning up the document automatically after that. And then we are adding a few missing pieces. We call that normalization. If you've been working with speech synthesizers, you know that in many cases the pausing of an MP3 audio file is being done by a text speech synthesizer. It's being done by looking at the punctuation of the document. So whereas you're adding that lagging punctuation, for instance, at the end of the heading, at the end of the byline, to get a more natural sounding audio out of it. But that's really all there is to it, and then we convert it into MP3 and we return a document to the end user. So let me give you an idea of what it sounds like. Just like a good television chef, I did prepare myself, so we can actually go and listen to the document as well.
The Princess and the Pea, a story by Hans Christian Andersen. Once upon a time there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess, but she would have to be a real princess. He travelled all over the world to find one, but nowhere could he get what he wanted. There were princesses enough, but it was difficult to find out whether they were real ones. There was...
I think you get the idea of how easy it is to convert a document into an MP3 audio file. So let me show you something that is just slightly more representative of documents that we would find in the academic world. So let me show you another example of an inaccessible document and how we can convert that into something more accessible. This is actually a real example. I'm showing now a PDF document that we got from the Open University in the UK as part of the presentation we did there some months ago. So what we can see from this document is that from an accessibility point of view, it is a challenging document. We can see that the reading order of the document is not all that clear, at least from a computer perspective. It's not. We have an asterisk in the heading that is clearly a reference to a footnote somewhere on the document. We can see that at the bottom of the document that it is a footnote. We also have numbered footnotes in the document, and again numbered footnotes at the bottom of the page. We have some download information sitting in the right-hand side of the document in the right-hand margin. Moving on to the next page, we can see that we do have some redundant information, some header type information. And then, of course, we can see that this is not the clearest of scans that we're working with here. So let me show you what the service can do in terms of recognizing some of the semantic structure of the document when processing it, and how we can use the service to convert this image-only PDF document into something that is more useful. So I'm going back to the web form, and I'm going to select the file. I'm going to upload it to the service. In step 2, instead of selecting the MP3 audio option, I'm selecting the accessibility conversion option now. In step 3, instead of getting a long list of available speech synthesizers, what I now get is a list of available mainstream output format, so I can convert my image-only PDF into a Word file in either doc format or docx format. I can convert it into an RTF document. This is a great format if the document is going to be read on a Braille note taker, for instance. I can convert it into a tagged or accessible PDF document where any semantic structure or other structural element that I'm capable of recognizing would be stored alongside the text and the visual presentation. If it's something in rows and columns, then the user may find it more easy to navigate within the context of a spreadsheet, so we can convert it into Excel, or we can convert it into a more generic comma-separated file, a more generic spreadsheet format. We can also convert it into a plain text file where we strip out all the formatting information. We can convert it into an HTML document. So for this, I'm just going to select the docx output option, and then I'm going to type in my email address and submit the job for conversion. And again, I did prepare myself. It will, I think it's 45 pages or something like that. It will come back within the next 10 minutes. But I did prepare myself here, so we can actually go and have a look at the document that was converted by the service. So here we got, I'm showing now a copy of the converted document, and I'm going to talk you through it and explain what has happened to it. So first of all, you'll notice that the text is much clearer now than it was before, because it was recognized and turned into a proper text document, and a proper font was applied to it. Secondly, you will see what appears to be a mistake. The asterisk in the heading for some reason was converted into the number 8. It turns out the reason for that is that the document already contained 7 numbered footnotes. So we rightly determined the asterisk as a footnote reference and assigned the number 8 to that. It even renamed the asterisk at the bottom of the page also to the number 8, as we can see here. And actually, if we hover on top of the number 8, we can see that the service also managed to create a live link between the footnote reference and the actual footnote. So it did, on this part, manage to assess the logical reading order of the document correctly. We can also see that the download information was rightly placed in a text box in the document, so that it can simply just be ignored or deleted as it should be, because it's not part of the main text flow. And we can see, moving on to the next page, that the header type information was also identified as being header type information and put into the header section of Word. And again, now it's easy to edit it, it's easy to delete it. For instance, if we were to further convert this document into a reflowable document where we don't want hard-coded headers, then we can easily delete it from here before then resubmitting the document. Also, information in the header section would be ignored as it should be by a screen reader in most cases. So that should give you an idea of how we can convert inaccessible documents into something that is more accessible. Had the document also contained tables, text in columns, and so on, those semantics would also have been recognized by the service. So let me move on and show you a few more examples of other types of documents that we can convert. And I'm going to show you 2 examples of how we can convert accessible documents into something that is quite sophisticated. So the first example I would like to show you is a document here, an accessible document in Word format. By accessible, I mean that it complies with the accessibility requirements for this particular document type. I've used Word the way that Word was intended to be used. I've set up the document with the proper heading structure. I have used the language tool to define each of the different language sections. So I got 2 English sections. The master language was set out to be British English, and then I explicitly marked up the second language section to be American English. I got a French section, a German section, 2 Spanish sections, and so on. I simply saved the document and asked the service to convert it into an ebook in the ebook format with a media overlay, where all the audio is being selected based on the language sections of the document. So in order to read back the document, I need an ebook reader that is capable of reading these types of ebooks with a media overlay. So this is also an example of how you can use free software. So what I'm going to be using for this is a free app. I'm using Medium, but you could also use, there's a whole variety of different technologies that you can use for this. I'm using Medium. You could also use Adobe Digital Edition that would do the same. We've also found apps that will run great if you are using a tablet or smartphone. So the same document as before, just now we have it in an ebook reader. I can do all the things that you would expect me to be able to do, like generate a table of contents based on the heading structure, navigate using bookmarks and so on. And what I can also do is that I can have the document read out to me simply just by pressing the text.
The purpose of the present convention is to promote, protect and ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities, and to promote respect for their inherent dignity. American English. The purpose of the present convention is to promote, protect and ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedoms by all persons with disabilities, and to promote respect for their inherent dignity. French. La présente convention a pour objet de promouvoir, protéger et assurer la pleine légale jouissance de tous les...
So, a fairly simple authoring environment, just using Word the way that it was intended to be used, not abusing Word, to create your accessible Word file, and then a free application for reading back the document. So I think you
Hi Lars, kind of sorry, it's Darlene here interrupting. You only have about 5 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Yep, great, thank you.
Yeah, the last example I would like to show you is really a document. If we've got a document with math content, in this case, another example of an accessible document. You just need to make sure that if you're using equations, that these are composed using an equation editor. And one of the conversion options that we do have available for this is the ability to convert it into a DAISY talking book where the math is being read out. So I'm just going to skip to that very fast so you get an idea of that. So here we got the same document converted with the service into a DAISY talking math book.
The definition of a quadratic equation is any equation that can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a not equal to 0. By completing the square on this generic equation, you arrive at the quadratic formula x equals fraction minus b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac and root over 2a.
So that should give you an idea of how you can use the service to convert inaccessible documents into more accessible content, and it should also show you how you can convert otherwise already accessible material into some quite sophisticated formats. Let me go back to PowerPoint. Behind each of these web forms, there's a dashboard that you can use to control the appearance and any restrictions that should apply. So who should have access to the form? For instance, you can also maintain a whitelist of approved users to the service this way if you want to restrict access to the service. I would also like to point you to the SensusAccess website. If you go to SensusAccess.com, you will be able to use the service to convert your own documents. If you go to the Convert a File tab, you'll be able to upload your own documents and see how they work out. This is also a place where we put resources like good practices and information like that, video examples and so on that you can use if you're interested in setting up your own version of the form. We're going to leave you with a copy of the presentation where you can see how the service have been integrated at other academic institutions. I'm showing the University of Kent's website now with the embedded web form. We're showing you the Stanford University implementation of the service, and we're showing you an example from a Canadian university, McMaster University, and how they have implemented the service. There's an email interface to the service that you can use as well. It's fully documented on the website. It really just works the way that you forward your documents to particular email addresses, like convert@sensusaccess.com. If you want to convert your image-only PDF into a Word file, you just forward it to that account and write DOC or DOCX in the subject of the mail. So lots of different email accounts available for that. It's a great way, for instance, if you want to integrate the service with other types of services like learning management systems, digital libraries, or photocopier scanners capable of sending and receiving email. So in terms of pricing, the pricing is based on the size of the subscribing institution in terms of enrolled students converted into full-time equivalents. We try to keep the prices down. They're completely transparent, so we're using the same prices across the world. So these are really just the US prices converted into Australian dollars. It is a hosted solution, and the fees are annual flat fees for unlimited use of the service. We create user statistics for those who are interested in that. They can come out daily, weekly, or monthly, and they do provide you with a summary of how the service is being used with a breakdown by function, by language, and by submitted document type. And you can also see how the accessibility features of the service are being used to convert documents. So you can also use this as a way of monitoring how students, for instance, are using the service to convert inaccessible documents into more accessible formats, and that way as an indirect way of measuring how any campaigns that you may be running on trying to convince faculty to create more accessible content is being taken up. So if you decide to go this way, what we'll do is that we'll provide you with a customized web form. You'll have access to the dashboard. You'll have access to these resources I did mention, instructional videos, guidelines, and best practices, our dissemination material. We do have a number of training options available, including a free 2-hour workshop. We'll shortly be releasing a comprehensive e-learning course on the service as well that's going to be available to all subscribing users. You'll have the usage reports. You'll have access to the SensusAccess community. Especially in the UK, there's a very strong SensusAccess community that is great for sharing ideas and discussing issues about the service. And then, of course, we'll be providing you with back-end support. We would assume that you would want to build capacity to support your own users, but by all means, we'll be happy to support you and your users as well. And I think that is pretty much it.
Thank you, Lars. We actually just encourage people to put the questions into the question pod. We have one question. Is there any human interaction to tidy up the conversion?
No, the SensusAccess service is entirely automated, so there's no human interaction at all in that. We're not doing any quality assurance of the documents once they're being processed by the service. So if you want to do that, of course you can have those kinds of quality assurances built into your own workflow.
Okay. There's no other questions at the moment. Anybody got any other questions they'd like to add? So we rushed you a little bit at the end, Lars. Is there anything that Tanja or Lars you want to just say? No, just thank you for being patient, and if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to throw us an email and we'll be happy to answer any of them. And if you want individual demonstrations, do not hesitate to throw us an email as well, and we'll be happy to do that. No, that's fantastic. There's been no other questions coming through, so we will end it. So thank you so much to both of you for presenting and for getting up so early. Hold on. Sorry, there is another question. I just heard Jane yell from the other room. Can individual students purchase this at all? No, they cannot. Okay. And that is for several reasons. I mean, we do have another version of SensusAccess that we have been promoting for those who have nobody to support them at all. But for individual institutions, it really is the SensusAccess version, the way that Lars has been presenting it. Okay. And just somebody else has asked, what is meant by fully accessible maths document?
Well, a fully accessible document provided in the Word format is really just a document that complies with accessibility guidelines for Word. So in essence, it means that you have authored your document in the way that it was intended by Word. It has the proper metadata like the title, the author. It's got a proper nested heading structure, and then all math equations have been authored using a proper equation editor. So the equations I was showing in the example are not pictures of equations, and they were not just typed in using the keyboard. I used In this case, I used MathType, which is a third-party plugin to Microsoft Office, but you could also use a built-in equation editor for that. So that is what we mean by accessible math documents.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Well, I think that's it. No more questions? Gone. All right. Well, thank you once again to you both. It was very informative, and yes, there are your contact details for anybody would like to contact Tanja or Lars, but we'll also have their information, and the website's up on the screen. Yeah, we look forward to many universities and TAFEs working with you into the future.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Bye.